Matt Royce, and we are a bi-monthly podcast about liars, frauds, thieves, and bullshitters. You can also find us on Twitter at LCS Podcast. We're on TikTok at Lie, Cheat, Steal Podcast. And if you like what you hear, please leave us a 5-star review and wherever you're listening to this, or you can subscribe to our Patreon where we release 2 more episodes every month. That's patreon.com/lie, cheat, and steal. As always, I'm here with my co-host, Kath Barbadoro. Kath, how you doing?
Hi, Pat. I'm good. We just took a little break between episodes, and it's late August, so I had to eat a delicious heirloom tomato as a snack.
Oh, fuck
It was so
yeah.
good. It was so good. I went to the farmer's market yesterday and I bought like 2 pounds of fancy heirloom tomatoes, and yeah, that's basically all I've been eating for 2 days. Just slicing them up, putting a little balsamic vinegar on there, a little olive oil.
Ooh, hell yeah.
Delicious. So good.
Yeah. Earlier in the summer, Dale Alexander, the guy I was working with doing carpentry, he had been growing some tomatoes and he gave me a few. I just went home and chopped them hoes up, made a BLT, and like, oh, good Lord.
Oh yeah. I was just thinking I need to go to the store and get some bacon because this is some prime BLT tomatoes. These are some they're not the same at the grocery store. Grocery store tomatoes are just, they don't compare. I remember when I lived in a house in Austin, my roommate he had a little garden in our yard, and we had like a compost thing in our kitchen, and he would use the compost to fertilize the stuff he was growing. And I remember he grew this tomato in this yard that must have come from a seed in the compost, because it was like a grocery store tomato, and it was like, oh, it turns out they just grow them like that, I guess, because they're easier to transport. Like, it was just this like big, tasteless, waxy, like hard tomato, and it's like, oh, I guess they just cultivate them that way. That's sad that we don't like have real tomatoes in the grocery store anymore. Very weird. Uncanny Valley tomato. Freaky.
Yeah. Like AI tomato.
Yeah. No, if you got a hookup, someone who's growing them. Good stuff. Hard to beat. Hard to beat a good tomato.
There was an advertisement in it was like it's called like Harper's Bazaar, some fucking magazine that sells a bunch of useless stuff. And one of them was for like a tomato growing kit. You can tell it was definitely geared towards senior citizens, because it was just like, when you buy a tomato grower, you want lots of tomatoes. Why only settle for a few weeks of tomatoes when you can have months of tomatoes? And I was like, man, this is speaking like senior citizen language. Like, yeah, please settle for a few weeks of tomatoes. Yeah, so that's what's up. Tomato time out there. I'm
tomato time.
Yeah, after we get done here, I'm gonna go do the FPIA funniest person in Austin contest.
Yeah, it was funny. You were texting me about it, but your autocorrect changed FPIA to FOIA, which is Freedom of Information Act. And you were like, I need to figure out when the FOIA. I was like, is he doing FOIA requests for our podcast? Is he like getting really intense in the research? And then I was like, oh right, it's FPIA. That's
yeah, totally. Yeah, this I like, it's so much different than we used to do it. Like, there's more people. It was crazy. We were doing it. It wasn't like there wasn't a lot of people. There was like 250 signups when we were doing it.
Yeah.
And now,
but now it's exploded, huh?
It's exploded. There's months of fucking of prelims, and then there's like a quarterfinals round. They have to weed even more people out before they get to the semis. And so that's where I'm doing my quarterfinal round tonight. But it's funny because we used to take the shit so seriously. You know, like it was like FPIA season. It was like you met up with your friends, you practiced all day, and like
you went through your set with like a fine-tooth comb. And I guess it's a function of the fact that like Cap City used to be the only place where you could really do comedy for money. Like you could get a set at the Velve every once in a while, but as far as like working with real professional comedians, like the Cap City was the A club. It was the number one club, and now there's so many other places to go. It's just sort of like, that's cool.
Yeah. I think that, and just like also like the fact that I've been on the road for years,
getting older. I'm
just like 7 minutes. And I did 7 minutes tonight. I do 5 minutes last time, and I remember I would have sat there all fucking day, like, I'm take this out, take this out. I was like, I'm gonna start doing my set till I see the fucking light, then I'm gonna wrap it up and get out of there. And it's like I advanced. And so what's kind of cool is the person I'm staying with. We didn't know each other, but we have some mutual friends. And apparently his partner was just at my prelim round. And
nice.
and she was like, yeah, she told me that you were like probably the people that advanced were like the only people that had any business being there.
Yeah, I'd imagine with this many people in the contest, it's like,
Yeah.
do they do the thing what they used to do, which was very considerate of them, is they would try to sort of, if Cap City knew you and knew you were a pretty good comic, they would try to sort of evenly distribute the people who actually knew how to do comedy and not put them all on the same night or something like that.
It
Do they
looks like
still
they're
do
doing
that?
that. It looks like
Nice.
they are, because yeah,
That's good.
there's nights I didn't know nobody, and there was like literally the only people, like there was I went through with Angelina Martin, friend of the show, hilarious, love her to death. She and then another guy's older cat who I'd never seen before, but he was getting real big laughs. He's like a veteran. And he was like, yeah, that dude was like killing it. And I was like, okay, yeah. And like when they called everybody up, it's like, yep, that made perfect sense. Like,
that's who's going. Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't miss it. I do love Cap City still. It's still like it's my favorite club in the city for sure. But I don't miss that contest. I really don't.
Yeah, no. It was very stressful. I think now that I have a different outlook on it, I just don't give a shit. I just showed up. I showed up. I wasn't late, but I had to be there like 15 minutes before for the little breakdown. Okay, here's what we're gonna need from you or whatever. And like me and Avery parked the car like 2 minutes before the show was supposed to start. Like we just ran in there and they were just like, get in here, guys. It's like,
yeah, fine, sorry. All right.
We love y'all, but we don't give a shit. But yeah, that's what's going on. So yeah, we get done here. I got a few hours to kill, in which case I'll probably put something together, because it's got to be.
Yeah, it's the semifinals now, or it's the quarterfinals. You gotta give it a little bit of effort.
Yeah, and only 2 people are going through on this one. I think I know who the other one's gonna be. And, should I say it? Like, yeah, I don't think I think Colton Dowling. I think Colton Dowling's gonna go.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, because he's like one of the very few people I know on the list, and also just like Colton is like I'm not knocking his joke writing, but he's got a huge presence as well. He's one of those guys. He in big crowds, with big crowds with like a limited interest in comedy. Love that shit, So I think it's gonna be him, and hopefully it's me and him standing back to back, Danny Glover, fucking Mel Gibson style.
Well, by the time this episode comes out, it will be in the past, so you guys can fact check. Hopefully, Pat made it through.
Yeah.
Here's my segue. You're doing your art tonight. This story's about art. Speaking of art. Yeah. The story. This is another art fraud case, another art forgery case. Woo! One of my favorites, one of my specialties. This is quite a doozy. I was surprised I hadn't heard of this before, because it's pretty big, and there was a documentary about it that came out a few years ago that I watched most of. I kind of scrubbed through parts of it because it was very long. This is like, the indictments about this were fairly recent. So today I'm going to be telling you about a guy named Norval Morriseau and his artwork, and the people who have copied his artwork for great acclaim and money.
Oh, so he is the victim.
Yes.
Okay.
Debatably, it's interesting. There's some inclination that he may have known about this and been okay with it, but we're not sure. So. Okay.
Well, art scams are always crazy, because it's like we're talking about the fake Rolexes. It's like at some point when you're just at some point you're still making that. Like if you're the one like painting the shit.
If you just like the picture, you like the art, then you like the art. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like to be an art forger, you still have to be very good at making art. Like you can't just. It's not like you're just printing it on a t-shirts or whatever.
Right. So this guy Norval Morriseau, this story takes place in Canada, and there's some details of it that are like super Canadian that I think are really funny. But this guy, he's arguably like the best known Indigenous artist in Canada. He painted for like 40 years. He was really prolific. He was a Ojibwe Anishinaabe First Nations guy. He grew up in Thunder Bay, Ontario, which is kind of above Wisconsin on the Great Lakes. And that was where he was based for like most of his life. I actually think he grew up further remote than that. I misspoke. He was in Northern Ontario, and then he like came to Thunder Bay later in life, and that's kind of where he was based, and that's where, as we'll see, many of his forgers were based as well. So I'm a Thunder
Bay based art forgist,
it does sound cool.
Yeah, there's like a really hip forgery scene out there.
So Morriseau was known for founding this school of art called the Woodland School, where he really influenced a lot of other First Nations artists in Canada. And he sort of took these sort of traditional like petroglyphs and images of like Great Lakes region Indigenous people and then put them on canvas, made them, he was a painter. So yeah, he was self-taught. He grew up in a very remote area of Ontario, and he sort of developed his style on his own. Initially it was kind of more earth tones, and his style was always very graphic, but like later in life he moved to these like very bright sort of neon colors. And his work is like very, as I said, very graphic. It's very like, there's like thick black outlines, really bright colors. It reminds me a little bit of like Keith Haring. I will send you some of his paintings. It's very like a lot of people compare him to Picasso.
Okay.
I'm
when I'm thinking about those bright colors with like thick black lines, I think graffiti.
Yeah, it does kind of have like a graffiti vibe to it.
Oh, I've seen Keith Haring stuff before. Yeah.
Yeah. So I just put a link in the chat. I don't know if you can see it, but
yeah. Okay. Here we go.
So it's kind of psychedelic.
Yeah. Also, this looks like this is the backdrop to the '90s. You know, what I'm saying like the Keith Haring stuff more than the Norval Morriseau, but I certainly see it. And I love this because like I'm a armchair graffiti guy myself, and I just love like how just crisp it always looks like when it's like a bright color with like a nice black line going through it. It's just like it's just so fucking aesthetically pleasing.
It's why I like traditional tattoos too. It's like those thick black lines, those big swaths of saturated color. Like it's really nice.
This guy fucking rules, man.
His stuff is cool. So he like initially painted a lot of sort of stuff from traditional Ojibwe mythology, and then later in life he changed religions a few times over his life. He became like a born again Christian. He was involved in like some new age stuff, and so when he would do that, he would start painting from those traditions as well. He was also bisexual, so he painted a lot of sort of erotic works as well. But the thing about him is that he spent most of his life pretty itinerant. He had a pretty bad drinking problem. He was an alcoholic, and so he would occasionally be homeless. He spent some time in jail. And all throughout this time,
everything you look for in a good artist. It's like
totally.
Yeah, he's fucking all sorts of people. He's like flip-flopping religions all over the place and shit, like living on the road. Like, yeah, this is who I want making my art.
Right, exactly. It's he really lived it,
the fucking Ross Trent, the SNL sketch. I told my Boomba Clot parents that I'm switching religions.
Ross Trent is like maybe my favorite SNL thing ever. I love it. I watch it.
I'll just get drunk sometimes and like ooh, I'm gonna look that up right now and just laugh my ass off.
It's still so funny to me. It's like a perfect and it's so amazing because it's like it's clearly written by someone who like knows a lot about reggae and like knows a lot about Rastafarianism, and it's so crazy that they let them put that on SNL because it's like so specific, and also just like really specific and also not made by anyone with any cultural like association with that world. It's amazing. It's such a miracle.
The whole thing that I think sums it up perfectly at the beginning when he goes Rastafarianism, like instead of just Rastafari or just Rastafarianism, like just like he's 1 degree off fully getting it.
So this is all definitely the life of the artist, but unfortunately it makes it really hard to get like a good accounting of all of his works because he like sometimes he would sell them to art dealers, sometimes he would like exchange them for like a place to stay or like a meal, like he would paint for friends, and like he so it's really hard to figure out like how many paintings he did and like where they all ended up. He also was really prolific. He did paint a lot of paintings, but there are a lot of fake ones out there, unfortunately, and you can tell. I think you can see with his style, he definitely has like a very unique eye, but it doesn't take a ton of technical skill to paint things that look sort of like his stuff. You know what I mean? Because it's like lots of big shapes. Once you sort of get the template, you can kind of replicate the idea without a ton of skill, you know?
What was it? It reminds so much of this shit. Reminded me of that other artist that you compared him to, but you saw like that was like what like title cards and like 90s TV commercials looked like and shit. Just
Keith
that whole
Haring,
like
yeah,
the Keith Haring. There's like PBS would be like, hey, this little PBS, and like the little black line crocodile walking and like just that little those shapes. Yeah, it was very prevalent, and I can see because it's easy to replicate. Like you got to know to create it and come up with it is pretty fucking. It takes an eye, but yeah, to replicate it, it doesn't take that much skill, as you were saying.
Right, and like the fact that it caught on so much is like proof of like a really amazing vision. But the actual act of creating the art is not super complicated, which is like I think cool why. S. Yeah, it's like a cool S. Whoever came up with it is a fucking genius. The rest of us are mere copycats. But yeah, so in the early 90s, Morriseau was diagnosed with Parkinson's, and he had a stroke in the 90s, and so he was not able to paint quite as much. But that's when things started to get sort of fishy, because he stopped really being able to paint in the mid 90s, but there were tons of new Morriseau paintings coming on the market at that time. And everyone was like, where are these all coming from? Because this guy can't paint anymore. So he was then enlisted in authenticating his own work. You know, like he was still alive. He was allegedly still very mentally sharp, even though he physically was not as able to like produce work. So he identified about 175 works as forgeries when he was alive. He died in 2007. And yeah, he was just like an incredibly influential artist to Native artists in Canada. He's done like a ton of publicly commissioned work. Like if you go to like a Canadian university, there's very likely that they have some of his work hanging there. Like, you know, he's kind of a national treasure, right?
Yeah. Rightfully so. It seems like a rad dude. You know,
he was pretty rad. Like he definitely lived a life. You know, he really was out there. So this problem of forgeries definitely was identified even while he was still alive, but it got even worse after he died, because then there's nobody to tell you whether it's fake or not. And like he produced thousands of works, so it's, you know, it's really hard. So
man, he stayed in my guest bedroom in 1994 for 3 weeks, and for payment he gave me this painting and a bag of mushrooms. I swear to God.
Right, exactly. That's like 100% what people are doing. And so in 2019, and this is where things get very Canadian in a very funny way, this documentary came out in 2019 called There Are No Fakes. And this documentary was spurred on because a member of the Bare Naked Ladies bought a
real Canadian.
Exactly, just like so Canadian. Kevin Hearn of the Bare Naked Ladies bought a painting allegedly by Morriseau called Spirit Energy of Mother Earth. And he loaned it to the Gallery of Ontario for an art show. And the curator told him, this is fake. This is not a real Norval Morriseau painting. So he ends up suing the gallery that sold him the painting. And this lawsuit is, it's in 2012. And I think it like hadn't been settled when they started making this documentary. And
so how long did you buy this painting? He's like, let's see, it's been 1 week.
Exactly.
I was gonna lose sleep if I didn't do that. I'm sorry.
Also, another thing that's like crazy, just a crazy detail to me, is he bought the painting for $20,000, and he says like, you know, that's not like that big of a deal to me. And I'm like, how much money does being in the Bare Naked Ladies get you? Like
that's probably one of those ones where like you don't think about it and their royalties just fucking royalties. I bet they still tour. Yeah.
I mean, I think they probably still tour. They were like good. Like I think I had 2 of their albums as a kid, but like it's just weird that
I love that 1 week song, just because especially when it broke down, had a little rappy part, and I was always like rap first, rock later. But also, an interesting fact about them, you know, the Snow, the white Canadian rapper who sings with Farmer, that is one of their cousins.
Whoa,
Yeah, and
okay.
Snow, who was like held up, is like, oh, look at this fake white rapper. Look at Snow's rap sheet. Snow will smack the taste out of your mouth if you said that to him. He's like locked up on like, not locked up. He's got like hemmed up on like assault, drug trafficking shit. Like Snow is the real deal.
Yeah, Snow is from these streets of Toronto.
It's fucking glasses. It's just like, yeah, like, but yeah, don't, yeah, watch your mouth around Snow. That guy will take care
In
of
some ways, Snow the original Ross Trent, because like he was
you. Yeah,
definitely doing a fake Jamaican patois in that song.
my least
But I guess
favorite
he
white
earned it. So
my least favorite white rapper, Jamaican Patois, that Eminem album where he was still clearly on drugs. It's just like rapping in accents the whole time. Relapse, that's what it was. Relapse. Yeah, he's later. He's like, yeah, I was just on a lot of drugs.
I have no excuse. So yeah, this documentary comes out. He has this purported Norval Morriseau painting that he is told is fake. And then the documentary kind of gets into down this wormhole of the sort of world of counterfeit Norval Morriseau paintings and sort of the feuds that have developed in the art world because of this. Because obviously, if you own some of these paintings, they're very valuable. They sell for on average about $15,000, like more for
Yeah.
bigger and more notable ones. So there's like a real vested interest with people who own these of not declaring them forgeries, because then
Oh, of
they're,
course. Yeah.
you know, so
Yeah.
like,
I wonder. I'm sorry. As I wonder, in the world of forgeries, is it more common to have forgeries of style or forgeries of exact pieces? And I
yeah,
guess it would be. I guess it would have to be forgery as a style. Forgery of exact pieces seems like it'd be impossible to pull off because everybody's
yeah,
like, oh, no, that's the fucking Storm of the Sea of Galilee or whatever. But if you could do the style of somebody and be like, oh, this is one of their lesser knowns.
yeah. So
Yeah.
it's you can do it of exact paintings if the painting has been lost. So like
Oh,
that is a
that's right.
common like stuff that it's like, oh, it was hidden during World War II so the Nazis wouldn't destroy it, and like here it is again. Like
Yeah,
those
yeah,
kinds of things are sometimes replicas of exact paintings, but mostly, yeah, you try to do lesser known works early, like in the style of someone, or like
yeah.
if there are sketches of something and then no final painting, you like can paint the final painting, like that kind of stuff.
I wonder if there's any fake Far Side Gary Larson panels out there. Like he's got I love the fucking Far Side. I mean, anybody with a brain loves the Far Side, but like, I just wonder if like that seems like it'd be real easy to fake and
Yeah.
just be like, oh yeah, I have these early Gary Larson one panels and shit.
Probably.
Writing
I
them
feel
down,
like I feel like there's a market for it, so why
yeah.
not? But yeah, so this documentary is really interesting. And another thing, the thing that is the most interesting about it is that this documentary started an investigation into all of these people, many of whom appear in the documentary. That was like a multi-year investigation. It just concluded in March, and a bunch of people were charged. So
Canadians, get with it, guys. You're like, oh yeah, sure, I'll be in the documentary about fake art. It's like you are digging your grave, sir.
it's wild. This documentary has so many characters in it too, just like the weirdest people. Like, so there's this guy named Richie Sinclair who is a protege, a purported protege of Norval Morriseau. Um, he's like he looks like a guy who would be named Richie Sinclair. He's like a white guy with long hair. Um,
The amount of white guys named Richie who are white with long hair has to be a big part of the pie graph.
yeah, and like he doesn't overtly pretend to be Native American or First Nations, but like he definitely is doing that. Like he's an artist himself, and he goes by Star Dreamer, which he said is what Norval Morriseau called him. And like, so he like it's tough because he's sort of like not credible, but also he is a big advocate for like a lot of these paintings are fake, and like he started this website that because he's like, Norval Morriseau like taught me how to paint, like he was like my mentor, and I am really frustrated with the fact that there's so many fakes out there. So he starts this website where he shows works that he thinks are like disputed, and he's been sued numerous times by people who own these works. There's a lot of smear campaign type stuff about him where like this may be true, but like, so what people who don't believe him say is this is basically like a rent boy of Norval Morriseau's, that like back in the day they hooked up, and this guy like is just a nut. You know what I mean?
Yeah. He taught me how to paint. Who was that comic running around, that crazy female comic running around? I know who she was, but she was running around Austin, and she would like hook up with these touring road comics, and then it would turn into I wrote their half hour.
Yep. Yeah, totally.
You didn't write Norm's half hour. Oh, you wrote one of the best half hours of comedy ever written. Like, yeah, sure thing, girl.
That was all you. Yep. But yeah, so this guy Richie Sinclair, he sort of like spearheaded this movement to like declare a bunch of these forgeries. There is like a very obvious tell on a lot of these, at least according to the documentary, where Morriseau would sign his paintings in like Ojibwe syllabic script. So like he wouldn't sign them as Norval Morriseau, he would sign them in syllabic Cree syllabics as Copper Thunderbird, which was like his First Nations name. Yeah. So and he would sign them on the front, and it's like it's very obvious. It's like a big graphic on the front. And a lot of these forgeries are signed on the back as Norval Morriseau. They just have his English name, and then usually a title of the painting, which like none of the undisputed works have that. So it just seems very obviously fake. But a lot of these people are like really invested in this idea that these are real, to the point where there's these two people named John and Joan Goldie, who are a couple who had, it's now been taken down, I think because some of these people got charged, but it was called the Norval Morriseau Hoax Exposed Blog.com, which like get some concision, guys.
Dude, there's one thing about like I've noticed about just like Canadians have like, I don't say no swag, but there's just something like, I don't know if because like if they don't have to worry about healthcare, and they just don't like they always like miss the mark. It seems a little things like oh, I'm an artist, my name is Star Dreamer. It's like that's just two fucking words, man. You pulled out of my hat. And it's like I was listening to like a true crime thing about this guy was a victim. His name was Tim. He got killed, and they were gonna like have a fund set up in his name to help like victims of crime, families of murder victims, and it was called Tim's Tribute. Like it's kind of like it just feels like it's like grammatic. It's like how they call things instead of ninth grade, it's grade 9. It's just
a little like, off.
Yeah, it's always a little off. It always sounds a little Canadian.
It's like my friend JP McDade has a tweet that I reference all the time where it's like you think Canada's normal, and then you find out some shit like they call Kermit the Frog Green Dennis, and you're like, what is this? Why is your milk in a bag? Like, what is this place?
Yeah, obviously the best fake Canadian universe is in South Park, where all the fucking the wheels are square and their heads are flat, right? Like just so fucking good. But close second is the Kroll Show universe for Brian Lacroix, and then just the whole universe of like the Wheels Ontario shit, just so fucking funny. Yeah, he's the only, instead of like on Degrassi, it was like Drake was like in a wheelchair, and it's like everyone's in a wheelchair except for him, and the bully's like, hey, what's up, legs? Our strange neighbors to the north, we love you, we're just kidding.
You're one of a kind, Canada.
Yeah.
But yeah, so these people, John and Joan Goldie, they're like, for years, they've had this website up where they're like, basically they say, in their view, the forgery claims were part of a grander conspiracy cooked up by a cabal of art elitists who want to drive up Morriseau prices by declaring vast swaths of the artist's oeuvre fake. So they own some purported Morriseau paintings that have this English signature on the back and are thus probably not real. And they basically just go like full on hardcore character assassination on anyone who claims otherwise. Just like immediate, like, you're a culture genocider, you're, unscrupulous. They've accused people who are purporting this conspiracy of murdering journalists. Like they're nuts. They're nuts.
It's like, no, and at the end of the day, like the money you're talking about, you're talking about like maybe like I don't know how much his paintings go for, but I would say if you took the tabulated value of all of his paintings, maybe you're looking at like a few $1 million, maybe, you know, saying like.
Well, we'll get into that. Okay, it may be more.
Okay,
But
Also,
yeah, for
it's so
these
funny to
people,
see all these presumably dreadlocked white people just causing a big old ruckus in the space of native art.
it is, I mean, yeah, that is something that is very funny about this, is like most of the people involved in this are not native
Oh
whatsoever.
yeah, man! All the feet in this are dirty.
Yeah, in
Dirty
many
feet
ways.
with dirty feet with pinky rings on them, on pinky toes. Yeah, it's just ugh.
Well, yeah. So another thing that I think is very funny about them is like they're constantly accusing people who think some of these works are forgeries of being racist. Like they think they're like being anti-native. But then the other thing that this guy is famous for is having an online exhibit about the Boer War, which is like a South African colonialist war that like
Yeah,
white
yeah,
supremacists love. Like white
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's
supremacists
what,
love the
yeah,
Boers. And then
yeah.
and then he also says, so John and Joan Goldie have been sued numerous times for defamation because they keep saying all this horrible stuff about people. And John Goldie said, they're weaponizing the judiciary, just like Trump said. And it's like, I don't think you really care if people are being racist. I don't think that's your problem here. Like, I think there are other things going on.
Trump is the
But yeah.
real anti-racist. You're like, oh, yeah, oh, all right. Man, yeah,
So
dude, that
that's
that that generation is folding back in on itself with weirdos. And I've always said any adult person who outwardly identifies as a hippie, 9 times out of 9, kind of a piece of shit. Like, I've never had.
I actually don't think I really think Star Dreamer is the only hippie here. I don't think the
Oh,
rest
okay,
of these
okay,
people are hippies. They're
yeah,
John and John Goldie were like documentary filmmakers before they were insane about this guy. Like they seem pretty normal. I mean, they're insane, but like culturally pretty mainstream.
yeah, okay,
And
okay,
then but we will get into some real dirtbags in a sec, because that's who
nice.
ended up getting charged with this stuff. So John and Joan Goldie were just kind of a weird aside that I wanted to call out because the name of their blog is so funny. Um,
And real
so
dirtbag is actually that's a legal term, the RMCP. You got charged with 8 counts of being a real dirtbag.
well, I mean, that's kind of what happened. So this, like I said, this documentary came out in 2019. But charges against some of these people didn't come out until this past March 2023. And the Thunder Bay and Ontario police arrested 8 people for allegedly counterfeiting between 4,500 and 6,000 pieces of art credited to Norval
That's
Morriseau.
huge numbers.
Huge numbers.
That's huge numbers. That has to that actually okay. I guess that really would fuck up like the economy of an artist. You know what I'm saying? It's like
Yes.
6,000 pieces out there purported to be fake. Like that could call your entire catalog into question.
Absolutely. And they say that like again, the average Morriseau goes for about $15,000. So this could be up to $100 million worth of value.
Yeah.
Just
Okay.
wiped out because these are all fucking fake. And
Yeah.
I mean if they're able to identify these, I'd imagine the value of a real one would go up quite a bit, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, I guess
Yeah,
that would help if you have real verifiably real one that might
right.
help your cause. Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
But if you're worried because Richie Stardreamer has put your painting on his website, which I've looked at them and I do so like what the way that Richie, I mean, obviously there's a signature thing on the back. The other thing that he says is like the way the order in which the paint was applied to the canvas is not right. Like on the forged ones,
Oh, yeah.
on the forged ones, the black lines are first, and on Norval's original paintings, the black lines are last. So like things like
yeah.
that.
Oh, yeah. That's like I dabble in a little graffiti here and there just as a hobby. But like, yeah, like when you're doing stuff, yeah, like laying that how you layer your shit out. I would imagine is distinct to each individual artist, and that would be a tell of being like,
Right.
no, this person does it. Yeah. Oh wow, there you go.
So, and I've looked at the comparisons between the ones that he thinks are fake and the ones that he thinks are real. And now that these people have been charged, like it is clear there are lots of forgeries out there. So, this guy that everybody kind of thought was a nut turns out was probably pretty correct.
Yeah.
So, yeah, investigators allege the forgeries started in the mid 90s with this guy David Voss, who he lived in Thunder Bay as well. And his story about how he got all of these Morriseau paintings was that he claimed that his dad, Dieter Voss, was a prison guard at the prison in which Morriseau was spent some time incarcerated. And there is evidence there that he did paint while he was imprisoned. It's like it's Thunder Bay. It's like really small. So they basically gave him an extra cell that he could use as a studio, which is like very Canada, very nice.
But we're only giving you primary color. Well, okay, give him the whole
color. But yeah, so he basically said like the guards would have him paint things for like prison script, you know, like paint this, I'll give you a pack of cigarettes, or I'll give you a couple bucks or whatever. Yeah. And then they would go on the outside and sell them for, you know, quite a bit of money. So that was his story, this guy, David Voss. That turned out not to be true. They couldn't find any evidence of this prison guard. And also like people who knew Morriseau were like, I know what happened to all the paintings he did in jail. Like he would give them to me and I would sell them, like, you know, that kind of stuff. So
if there's a way to get the painting out to the market, you could sell it for real money and have money waiting for you when you get out. You're not gonna sell. Yeah, I'm not gonna make something. I'm gonna trade it for a pack of smokes. Fuck out of here. Like
right, exactly. Like he was connected enough in the art world at this time to like not be doing that.
I was like, what a Canadian prison currency is. It's like hockey pucks and shit. He gets a bag of hockey pucks. Like, all right,
it's maple sugar candy. It's like, you know.
Oh man, I want some maple sugar.
So the crazy thing about this story is that there seem to be at least 3 independent forgery rings for this guy that were not working together, and all of them were arrested. So the second one I think is sort of the juiciest one, which is this guy Gary Lamont, so David Voss was in the mid-90s. Gary Lamont starts in the early 2000s, and he is just, according to the documentary, just like King Dirtbag of Thunder Bay. He was like a biker that sold drugs, and
King Dirtbag of Thunder Bay is that's a goddamn movie title.
Yeah, he was a real piece of work. He was pretty gross. He got charged with sexual assault a few years ago. Like he was just a nasty man.
I'm sorry all my heroes get dying. I had such little time with this guy. 3 seconds. I'm thinking he was very cool.
So he you know, like Thunder Bay doesn't have a lot going on. It has drugs, and it has Norval Morriseau paintings. Like he's like the preeminent artist in Canada, and he was working out of Thunder Bay. And so this guy decided to get in on the art forgery racket, and he initially was selling them on eBay, and he may have had a few authentic ones at first, because like obviously we all know art dealing is famously a wonderful front cover for drug money. You know, it's a great way to launder. So he may have been involved in some legitimate sales of his work in the beginning, but then he gets hooked up with Morriseau's nephew, Benjamin Morriseau. And Benjamin Morriseau is also a painter, and he was also like his uncle. Benjamin Morriseau is Norval's nephew. Like his uncle, he also had like substance abuse problems. He's hanging out with this drug dealer. He's basically just hanging out there getting fucked up at this guy's house. And then they sort of start this scheme to forge his uncle's paintings. So it was Benji Morriseau and then a couple other people. He basically recruited these like talented young Indigenous artists to not do their own work, but to rip off this other guy's work. And I kept seeing things that said that they used child labor, but I didn't find anything about like who the children were or like how that would even work. But
also, I mean, like as far as child labor goes, like painting,
they do that anyway. They do that at school.
I'm not saying it's right. I'm just saying there's less of this shit.
Yeah. I mean, if you're just having them do arts and crafts, it can't be that bad, right?
They force these kids to make tie-dye t-shirts. It's like, that sounds like a fun day.
Yeah, I don't know, but that's apparently what they said in some of these articles. but basically they Benji set up a workshop at Gary Lamont's house, and they would just like get fucked up on drugs and do these paintings, and they think that's where probably the ones that are signed on the back are from. They think it's probably from this guy. And also another thing that was like very helpful for these forgers is that because these were Ojibwe Anishinaabe people, they knew the Cree syllabic alphabet that he would sign his name in. So like some of them were signed on the back, but they also knew how to do his signature on the front and like make it look legit, especially because a lot of his buyers don't speak that language or read it. So you couldn't really necessarily tell, you know?
It just says like crock pot or something. There's like, nice.
Right. Like they wouldn't be attuned to like subtle differences because they're just white people who don't know this language, you know? So yeah, they would paint these paintings and then drive them to Calgary and sell them. They do like 30 of them and then drive them to Calgary and sell them. So this is the scheme that there are questions about whether Norval actually was complicit in this, because this was he apparently knew Gary Lamont, and like obviously his nephew is involved in this. And there are like pictures of him and Gary Lamont together, and at this point in his life he couldn't paint anymore. He physically was unable to paint, and
so the Parkinson's taken over.
Exactly. And so the sort of rationale of the documentary goes into is just like he just felt like he was helping his community, you know, like he was getting people paid in Thunder Bay, which like is in a super prosperous place.
This is the first time I feel like I've heard stuff like this where it's like an artist allowing their shit to get traffic. I'm trying to think of other examples, but I feel like I've heard about this before, where it's like, hey man, like if somebody's getting paid for it, you know, say like,
right,
artists being like, say I heard comics like, say you featured for me, say you opened for me, whatever, I don't give a shit, go ahead, like, which to me is kind of like an alternate real one kind of move. Like it's like that's tight. Also, I feel like it would have been a lot easier to you could have forged a later Norval painting, but being like, this is definitely him when the Parkinson set in.
A little shaky.
But it's him for sure, though.
So, and then in 2008, there was a third ring of people forging stuff who are also charged. All of these people were charged in this indictment. And these are some of the most sort of well-connected ones. So like David Voss and Gary Lamont are both they're not like art world people. They're like crime people. And that's why they, they're like pulling a fast one. The last group of people is sort of more art world people, like people with more clout. So there are these guys, Jeffrey Cowan, James White, and David Bremner, who not only did they forge paintings, they also forged certificates of authenticity and appraisals, which I think is shittier. I think that's worse. Because then again, it's you're not like, if you have a painting, you're just like, maybe this is by him, but like you're forging the paperwork.
You're not going to buy a painting that sucks just because it's by a guy. You know what I'm saying? Like if you're like it's supposed to be by this guy, and also it's a good painting. But then you get that little certificate. That's a little shittier.
So these are the guys that had sort of the biggest feud with Richie Sinclair, Star Dreamer. Like they were in and out of court. They sued him, and because these guys were art world guys, this accusation didn't really stick until this past month or this past year where they were charged. So they've all been charged with forgery, and they think there are several thousand more forgeries out there. Quite a few of them, again, are easily identified by the fact that they're signed in the wrong place. But because there were all of these different groups of forgers working, not all of their forgeries have the same tells, so it's like even trickier to kind of figure out who did what, like what the provenance is. So a lot of places, a lot of like galleries and colleges and places that own his work are now calling in authenticators to make sure that they have a legit one. And this guy basically, it's funny, like they talked to an authenticator, and he basically said he just goes on vibes, which was really funny to me. He said He said, I get what he's saying, but the way he describes it, it's like, you're not doing yourself any favors. So he says, when we look at an artwork, the first thing an expert is going to have is an immediate impression. Some people would say that impression is not reliable because it's just a momentary impression, but that is not true. If a connoisseur is extremely well educated in the art of the artist, their brain will contain all of the facts, all of the knowledge, all of the visual knowledge that they already have to form an impression and highlight things that might be wrong. It's like if a mechanic looks at a car and there's something out of place, they notice it right away if they're a good mechanic. So like, I get what he's saying, but it does sound like you're just going on vibes.
Like, just straight vibes. Yeah, just like, you know, what it's putting out, you know. I can see, like, we did the handbag episode recently, and I remember like people coming to the pawn shop and like, and again, this isn't just because of like any like crazy like, you know, like house level fucking like diagnosis shit, but like I'd be in line, there'd be 3 or 4 customers back, and I'd see they have like they're holding 2 handbags. And be like, oh, okay, one of those is gonna fucking pawn. I'd be like, you know, one of them's theirs, one of them is pawn. As we work on another transaction, you look over and be like, that was not real, and you just know, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And like I get that, but again, it wasn't like I wasn't a vibe. It was the fact that I'd be like, I could just see like the shitty leather work, or I could see that like the 2 panels on this half are just uneven or whatever, or just like, yeah, you can just spot that. It wasn't like I was just like, yeah, it's fake, you know.
I do know what he's saying though, in the sense that if you've looked at a lot of art by someone, there are things that are sort of not consciously perceptible, but like you've trained your brain on it so much, you're just like, I know that doesn't look right. And hopefully with a longer study, you can figure out exactly what it is. But I mean, even looking at Richie Sinclair's website, you can kind of see that like the ones that he says are forgeries, it's like, yeah, these don't look like they're quite in the same style as this. Like I can just tell they're not quite some the colors aren't as vibrant. Sometimes like the way that the faces are done isn't the way that he would do faces, like just things like that.
See, catching the vibe off that. You just look, it's like your brain's looking at 100 different things and calculating together to give you one impression of it, and you're like, that's not right, or something's off. You know, or everything looks like where it should be, you know, whatever the case.
But yeah, so these people are all awaiting trial, I believe. But yeah, unfortunately they did sentence his nephew. So Benji's also been indicted on this. So yeah, all of those white people, and then Benji as well. So
shit.
Yeah, I don't know if they've been sentenced. I don't think their sentences are going to be that long if they get caught, because it's like if they get convicted. I think it's like 5 years or something, but yeah, they basically like fucked up the market for this guy's paintings, and that sucks. So worth it? I don't know. I mean, kind of, especially if the guy said it was okay, then yeah, but if the guy didn't say it was okay, don't do it.
Don't do it. Yeah, where it doesn't seem like any of them like led a very crazy like successful life off of it, you know. It feels like they were all working towards something, or because they were like all artists, they were like they might have got a couple paydays and just fucking, you know, they just kind of partied on it or whatever. It didn't really set them for success in any meaningful way.
But
and then not worth it maybe, but you know, and it also sucks too, is that like that's like that guy was in a position to like really help people who needed help through his artwork, you know what I'm saying, and keep the money in house and keep everything, and now that's fucking gone because of outside agitators. That sucks ass.
Yeah, it's tricky because like the guy that he potentially maybe partnered with, Gary Lamont, was like a shitty guy. Like that was a bad person to get involved with. But like the principle of the thing, if the guy is just saying like, yeah, it's okay, like I want my nephew to make money, you know, that kind of stuff, like I can't paint anymore, it does get a little bit debatable. But I mean, yeah, this guy's been dead for almost 10 years, and the rest of the people trying to capitalize off his name probably shouldn't do it. I think that's fair.
I'd say so. I would be like a really horrible person named Gary, but at first you're like spellbound by him, and then like they turn out to be like a really bad person. Like, Gary, how could you do this? Like the little name tag, like the G moves away, and you see it's a T, and they were named Terry the whole time. You're like,
no, you tricked me.
You tricked me by taking your heathenous fucked up name and replacing it with a good solid name like Gary.
That's how they get you. That's how the Terrys get you.
That's how Terrys get you. They make you think they're a Gary. Guys. Well, shit, Kath, thank you so much for telling us about that. Guys, if you guys like what you hear, we do a Patreon twice a month. We just recently did a roundup episode of current events and scams and kind of updates and some other stuff that we did. But we got some great episodes, and we'll always tell you on the free episode what we're doing on the paid one, so you guys know. New tradition starting last episode. But yeah, we something we got going on the Patreon. It's patreon.com/lie, cheat, and steal. You can catch us on Twitter at LCS Podcast, and we are on TikTok at Lie, Cheat, Steal Podcast. My name is Pat Royce. Find me on Instagram at PZTX, PEEZYTX. You'll find all my dates posted. Kath, you got anything coming up?
Yeah, I'm at Kath Barbadoro on Twitter and Blue Sky and all of those places. And I have a bunch of shows coming up. It's the pinned tweet on my Twitter. So check that out if you live in the New York City area. And thanks for listening, everybody.
Yeah, guys, thanks for tuning in. Have fun. Get out there, make the most of your week. Be safe, be smart, but above all, don't get caught.
Don't get caught. See you next time.